Rachel Nichols, and this is CNN.
A CNN documentary that premiered 2 nights ago got tremendous viewership and a lot of reaction. It's called Weed, and a lot of people are still talking about it. Chief Medical Correspondent Dr. Gupta spent a year digging into research on medical marijuana, and what he found made him do a complete 180 in his thinking. And before we talk to Sanjay about that and the response to the documentary, I want to play a clip for you. Now, Sanjay met a number of people whose lives have been dramatically changed for the better by medical marijuana. One of those people is a little girl named Charlotte. Take a look.
It was January 2012, Afghanistan. About 7,000 miles away from his family in Colorado, Matt Figge received this video from his wife, Paige.
It's horrible seeing these videos when I'm deployed.
It was his 5-year-old daughter, Charlotte, seizing. Diagnosed with a severe form of epilepsy, she was having 300 seizures a week. Each attack so severe, it had the potential to kill her. They had already tried dozens of high-powered drugs.
We needed to try something else, and at that point in time, marijuana was that natural course of action to try.
At home in Colorado, Paige searched for marijuana high in CBD. That's the ingredient some scientists think helps seizures, and also low in THC. Remember, she didn't want to get her daughter stoned. She found a small amount at a Denver dispensary. The owner was surprised that anyone would even want it.
They said it's funny because no one buys this, that was the general consensus, that nobody wanted it. It didn't have any effect.
Paige paid $800 for a small bag and took it home.
I had a friend that was starting a business making medicine, and I said, can you help me extract the medicine from this bag of marijuana? I measured it with a syringe and squirted it under her tongue. It was exciting and very nerve-wracking.
Holding Charlotte in her arms, Paige waited. An hour ticked by, and then another, and then another.
She didn't have a seizure that day, and then she didn't have a seizure that night.
Did you sit there and look at your watch?
Right, I thought, this is crazy. And then she didn't have one the next day, and then the next day, and I thought, she would have had 100 by now. And I just thought, this is insane.
Then Paige heard about the Stanleys, the 6 brothers, and their greenhouse of marijuana that is high in CBD.
I said, oh my goodness. He says, I don't know what to do with it. We're trying new things with it, but no one wants it. It's not sellable. I said, just don't touch that because we need that plant.
People have called us the Robin Hoods of marijuana. They say that we sell pot so that we can take care of the kids and the truly less fortunate.
Charlotte was the first of those kids. Late spring 2012, she tried the Stanley Special Marijuana, and again, it worked.
I can't tell you what that means to us.
Get you, doesn't it, a little bit?
If it doesn't get you, something's wrong with you. She lived her life in a catatonic state. Now her parents get to meet her for the first time. What a revelation.
Oh, yeah, gee.
The child who had 300 seizures a week was now down to just 1 every 7 days.
And it's kind of her example that was part of the reason you really have done a complete 180 on your opinion on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Charlotte certainly, just watching that story is unbelievable, but she's emblematic, Anderson, of a lot more patients. And the other thing was, if you just look at the literature in the United States on medicinal marijuana, the vast majority of studies are designed to look at the harm. That's what I realized. If you were to look at it sort of globally, you'd say it doesn't look very impressive. Then you realize that the vast majority of studies are actually looking for harm, a very small percentage, about 6%, to look for benefit. Once you start looking outside the United States and other countries and smaller labs, and then listening to the legitimate chorus of patients out there who have legitimate problems, who marijuana works for them when nothing else did, then you start to really dive into this, and that's what really tempered my...
And marijuana, the U.S. government still classifies marijuana in the same category as LSD and heroin. And those are defined as drugs with, quote, no currently accepted medical use and a high potential for abuse. Do you think that's just not true?
That is not true.
There's not a high potential for abuse and legitimate medical reasons.
Cocaine is a Schedule II substance. It has a higher potential for abuse. It is you're more likely to become addicted to it, almost twice as likely to become addicted to it. There are many substances out there, some of which are legal, that you're more likely to abuse than marijuana. It's not even close to being the truth with regard to abuse. With regard to medical applications, you saw, again, an example of that. But again, I don't want you to think this is anecdotal. That's been part of the problem with this debate, is people rely on conjecture, hyperbole, and anecdotal stories. There is real science here. So Charlotte is one girl, but she represents lots of patients who have problems for which marijuana has really worked for them. So it definitely has medical applications. And let me just share with you, Anderson, this wasn't in the documentary, but the United States government, through its Department of Health and Human Services, holds a patent on marijuana as a protectant for the brain. It's something to protect the brain after head injuries.
How is that possible? The U.S. government holds a patent.
The U.S. government holds a patent on one hand, and on the other hand, same government says it has no medical applications. So it's, I mean, I've said this, I think I've said this to you before, but journalists, I think, are trained to hate hypocrisy. This is hypocrisy. I've never seen it quite like this.
You interviewed the director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse for the documentary. She told USA Today something. She said that if she was concerned that if the drug became universally legal, that adolescents would have more access to the drug. And that's something you hear from a lot of parents and people who work in the drug field who say it's kind of a gateway drug.
Well, first of all, I don't think it's a gateway drug. I mean, to the extent that that implies that your body somehow changes and that you now crave other drugs as a result of trying marijuana, I don't think that's true. I mean, the science doesn't back that up. People who get marijuana illicitly are often coming in contact in situations where they're then exposed to other drugs, and that may explain in part why they go on to heroin or cocaine or something like that. But with regard to adolescents, look, of course, I'm worried about that as well. I think any responsible doctor, any responsible parent, anybody would be worried about that. I don't want kids taking this stuff. I don't want anybody whose brain hasn't fully developed, which usually is the mid-20s, taking this stuff. That's not about this. But the trade-off shouldn't be, because of those concerns, we will then deny people therapy. That may be the only therapy that works for them. I don't think that's the trade-off, and I don't think even Nora Volkoff, who's the head of NIDA, would think that would be a good idea.
It's fascinating. You've gotten a huge response from this. I mean, what kind of response do you?
It was a bit surprising. I think
you apologized. You said, "I'm sorry that I was wrong about this."
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough thing to do, I think, for anybody. When I hit send on that op-ed, it's tough, but it's the right thing to do, because I didn't look deep enough at the evidence and the research that's going on there, and I think that we have been in this country misled. I said that. I think we have been misled systematically. It's been terrible misleading over the last 70 years, and I wanted to apologize for my own role in that. But I think now it's important to look forward and say, look, there is legitimate medical applications here. There's legitimate uses for marijuana, and people who needlessly suffered during this period of demonization of marijuana should feel like they maybe can have some options in terms of treating their disease, and that's the right thing to do.
Sanjay, good to have you on. Thank you. Fascinating documentary. If you missed it the first time around, I urge you to watch it. You can catch Sanjay's documentary Weed this Friday, 10 p.m. Eastern on CNN. Well, just to add